And joining us now from the Pentagon, Press Secretary John Kirby. John, the U.S. has spent almost 2 decades training up the Afghan military and the police. We've spent over $88 billion over that time training them up. Why are they failing so miserably in repelling the Taliban?
Which you're right, Chris. They have much more capacity than they've ever had before, much more capability. They got an Air Force, a very capable Air Force of helping defend their troops on the ground. They've got very sophisticated special forces who have been in the fight, and they're brave fighters. So this is a moment of leadership, and you heard the president talk about that the other day. It's their right and responsibility now to defend their citizens and their country. And I think when we look back, whatever the outcomes are, Chris, we're going to look back and we're going to be able to say that it came down to leadership, civilian leadership and military leadership in the field. Now, the one thing that we can assure our Afghan partners is while we aren't going to be on the ground with them going forward, we are not walking away from this relationship. We're going to continue to support them from a financial perspective, logistical perspective, and certainly aircraft maintenance. We're not walking away from this relationship.
Yeah, but John, you're talking about how well set up the Afghan military is. They're giving up huge swaths of the country. The Taliban now say that they control 85% of the country. I know you dispute that, but the Long War Journal, which tracks this kind of thing, estimates that 13 million Afghans now live in areas controlled by the Taliban, 10 million in areas controlled by the government, and 9 million in contested areas. And as you just heard Greg Palcott report, the Taliban is now fighting for control of the second largest city in the country, Kandahar, and people are fleeing the country. Are you surprised that the Taliban is making these kinds of sweeping advances so quickly?
We're certainly watching with deep concern, Chris, the deteriorating security situation and the violence, which is, of course, way too high, and the advances and the momentum that the Taliban seems to have right now. I mean, we're not unmindful of that, Chris. We're watching it and monitoring it, which is why we are, again, working with our Afghan partners to encourage them to use the capacity and the capability that we know they have, and we know that they know how to defend their country. This is a time for them to step up and to do exactly that.
The big question from the U.S. point of view is if the Taliban ends up taking over the country, which is certainly a possibility, will that increase the terror threat to the U.S. homeland? Here is Republican Congressman Michael Waltz. Take a look.
Al-Qaeda will come roaring back in the wake of an of a Taliban takeover, much like ISIS did when Obama pulled out of Iraq. And we saw what happened there with attacks across the Middle East, Europe, and the United States.
John, President Biden talked just this last week about our being able to blunt the terror threat from, quote, over the horizon, which means from not in country in Afghanistan. But our closest military bases to Afghanistan are more than 1,000 miles away. Are we really going to rely on that to protect the U.S. homeland from increased terror threats if terror groups find new safe havens in Afghanistan?
We always want to find additional options, Chris. That's why we're working with neighboring countries that are closer to Afghanistan to see what the possibilities are. And we're doing that as briskly and as energetically as we can to find additional options. That said, Chris, and you know this, we have sophisticated and robust over-the-horizon capabilities even without that. Now, obviously, closing down space and time would certainly make it easier and faster for us to deal with any kind of threat emanating out of Afghanistan towards the homeland. But we have the ability to do it even from afar, even from those bases in the Middle East, an aircraft carrier that's off in the Indian Ocean. We can do that. And we've proven that we can do that even in recent years in places like Libya. It's not like we haven't done this before or that there's a scrap of earth that we can't reach if we absolutely need to.
But in fairness, when you talk about Libya, we think of Benghazi and the fact that when that embassy was under attack, now I understand we're not talking about that, we're talking about them hatching plots. It took hours for U.S. resources to get to Benghazi, and by the time they got there, it was too late. Let me move on to another subject. There's also the question that I think a lot of Americans ask about the millions of girls in Afghanistan and women, the girls in school, the women leading full lives. What happens if the Taliban takes over and puts all of those girls and women back under Sharia law, puts the women back under the burqa? Are we really, in effect, saying that's not our problem?
I think the progress of women and girls in Afghanistan is the world's problem. It's everybody's problem. We obviously share the concerns over the progress they've made and the progress they still have yet to make. That's why we continue to call for a negotiated political solution to the end of this war that is Afghan-led, that the Afghan people have a voice in saying, and it's not imposed on them outside the country. It's got to be Afghan-led and a peaceful negotiated settlement so that that kind of progress can continue. The other thing I'd say, Chris, is that the president's made clear we're going to keep a diplomatic presence in Kabul. That means keeping diplomats at it. That means continuing the programs and the initiatives that we continue to espouse for women and girls, for literacy, for education, for advancement, and for reform. We're still going to be committed to those programs going forward.
But diplomacy and peace negotiations, if the U.S. is out, we have lost, and more importantly, the Afghan government has lost any leverage with the Taliban.
Yeah, this argument that somehow if you have boots on the ground, all of a sudden you have all this leverage has not that hasn't exactly panned out the last 5, 10, 15 years, Chris, when we had 100,000 troops on the ground. So the idea that if you have boots on the ground, all of a sudden that gives you leverage has not exactly been the historical record so far. What we do have is a lot of diplomatic leverage, and we're using that. We are still involved in trying to broker forward a negotiated settlement in Afghanistan, and nothing has changed about our commitment to that. And the rest of the international community also needs to stay committed to that kind of an outcome, so that it's Afghan-led, so that this kind of progress doesn't fall by the wayside.
I want to talk quickly about two other subjects with you. President Biden talked to Vladimir Putin on Friday about continued cyber attacks from that country on the U.S. A senior official afterwards, on a readout of the call, said that the U.S. will, quote, take any necessary action to defend our infrastructure. What kind of measures is the Pentagon Cyber Command prepared to take to defend the U.S.?
Chris, I think you could understand the last thing I'm going to do on national TV is talk about cyber operations in any great detail. What I can tell you is that our job is to provide options to the president, options in the cyber realm, options outside the cyber realm. And just because you face a cyber attack doesn't mean that that's how you necessarily respond in kind. There's a whole range of tools at the president's disposal. Some of those tools reside here at the Pentagon and at Cyber Command, and we're going to be prepared and ready to tee up those options for him whenever he might need them.
And would it be fair to say that the president has at his disposal a wide set of cyber options from the Pentagon if he decides to go in that direction?
That is very fair to say, yes, sir.
Okay, let's finally turn to Haiti. The Haiti's government has asked the U.S. to send troops there to deal with the chaos in that country. Is the Pentagon prepared to send U.S. forces there, first of all, to deal with the situation, and secondly, now that we've had the assassination of Haiti's president, is the situation there in the disarray, is that a matter of U.S. national security?
Well, Chris, as for your first question, we are aware of the request by the Haitian government. We're analyzing it just like we would any other request for assistance here at the Pentagon. It's going through a review. I'm not going to get ahead of that process. And today, an interagency team, largely from Department of Homeland Security and the FBI, are heading down to Haiti right now to see what we can do to help them in the investigative process. And I think that's really where our energies are best applied right now, in helping them get their arms around investigating this incident and figuring out who's culpable, who's responsible, and how best to hold them accountable going forward. That's where our focus is right now.
And real quickly, is what's going on in Haiti, is that a matter of U.S. national security?
I think we are watching the situation very closely, Chris. I don't know that we're at a point now where we can say definitively that our national security is being put at risk by what's happening there. But clearly, we value our Haitian partners. We value stability and security in that country. And that's why we want to send a team down there today to help them get their arms around exactly what happened and what's the best way forward.
John, thank you. Thanks for sharing part of your weekend with us. Always good to talk with you, sir.
You too, sir. Thank you.